Good morning, folks. Today we are going to be talking about the fricatives and affricates, like the production of fricatives and affricate sounds. We had already discussed the fricatives in most of the sections. That what are they, and time to time we had already explained that as well. When we talk about fricatives, they are the consonants with the characteristics that when they're produced, that the air escapes through a small passage and it makes a hissing sound. And I've already explained to you that what this hissing sound means, that the sound that's like that is the hissing sound. Most languages have fricatives, the most commonly found being something like S for sugar, right? And I've already told you that fricatives are the continuate consonants, which means that you can continue making them without interruption as long as you have enough air in your lungs. Plosives, which were described already before, they are not the continuants, right? Now, what do we mean by continuance? I've already explained it that in my previous lecture as well, that when you talk about these plosives, right, you just utter those sounds. For example, when you talk about the sound b, right? Now it means that you cannot prolong that sounds, but as long as the fricatives are concerned, you can prolong those sounds in a sense. Like for example, if you talk about the f sound, so you can prolong it as much as you can. So you can demonstrate the importance of those narrow passages for the air in the following ways. When we talk about these things, they make a long hissing sounds and gradually lower your tongue so that it is no longer close to the roof of the mouth, right? The hissing sound will stop as the air passage gets larger. And, making of the F sound, and while you're producing this sound, use your finger to pull the lower lip away from the upper teeth, right? So I've already done that experiment with you people as well. That, when you produce those F sound or like, the ch sound, which are the fricatives and all that, right? So when you pull your lower lip, the sound gets straight away changed. So the hissing sound of the air escaping between the teeth and the lip suddenly stops. As far as the affricates are concerned, when we talk about the affricates, they're rather complex consonants. Why? Because they begin as plosives and they end as fricatives. A very common example is the affricate heard at the beginning of the end of the word church. Now, when you talk about this church, it begins with an articulation practically as the same as that of the t sound, means the T sound. But instead of the rapid release with the plosion and aspiration, as we would find in the word tip. Now, the tongue moves to the position for the fricative of the sh sound. That means like, the sound of the ship, and that we find at the beginning of the word ship, right? So the plosive is followed immediately by a fricative noise. So since phonetically this affricate is composed of t and sh sound, and that represents the ch sound, right? Like for example, you have the t sound of the tip, so you just put that t phoneme in front of it, and then like the transcription of the ship, so the sh sound transcription, that is a kind of a symbol, right? And when you put them together, so that t and sh, that make the ch sound, which means so that the word church. However, if you talk about the definition of an affricate, that must be a little more restricted than what has already been said so far. So we would not class a sequence of plosives plus fricative as affricate. For example, when we find in the middle of the word breakfast, so the plosive K followed by the fricative F. So see, I was talking about the word breakfast. So the English speakers, they would generally not accept that the K and F forms a consonantal unit in a way that the T and Ch seems to. So it is usually said that the plosive and the following fricatives must be made with the same articulators, right? जिस तरह हम बात करते हैं कि जब हम breakfast की बात करते हैं तो break जो है वो K पे end होता है and fast जो है वो F से start होता है. So that K and F they don't make that sound of kafir, right? So it does not seem as an affricate. Whereas when you talk about the other sound like t and sh sound, right? And then when you combine those t and sh sounds, it makes a ch sound, which is similarly as compared one of the most synonymical, right? And these, to use that technical term, the plosive and the fricative must be Homo Organic. Now, the Homo Organic, which means that the sound K and F are not Homo Organic, which means that they do not sound similar, whereas the t and the sh both begin made with the tongue blade against the alveolar ridge, and they are the Homo Organics, which means that they both have the same articulators when they're spoken. This still leaves the possibility of a quite larger number of affricates, since, for example, t is Homo Organic not only with f, but also with s. So ts would also be counted as an affricate, although the affricates can be used to be more composed of plosives and fricatives. So it is usually regarded them as being single independent phonemes of English. So in this way, t is one phoneme and sh is another, and t and sure, when they become together and makes a sound of ch, yet another phoneme. Like, for example, you can take t as another as a separate phoneme, and then you take the sh sound as a different phoneme, and then you take the ch sound as a third phoneme. So whenever you want to transcribe the word church, right, when you need to write the transcription of that word church, right, so you will have the ch and the sound, and then the ch, right? So which means that you have the three phonemes in one word, and the three phonemes you will have in one word. When we talk about the affricates, so in English we have only two affricates, that is the ch sound and j sound. I've already explained that in slides, but they are the only two affricates phonemes in English, right? As with the plosive and the most of the fricatives, we have fortis and lens pair. I've already explained that fortis and lenis, what is fortis and what is lenis, right, in my previous lectures as well. And the voicing characteristics are the same as for the other consonants. Like when you talk about the ch sound, is slightly aspirated in the position where p, t, and k are aspirated, right? But not strongly enough for it to be necessary for foreign learners to give much attention to it. But the place of the articulation is as same as for the sh and j sound. Like, for example, the j sound when you talk about the word vision or pleasure or leisure. So that sound, and that is post-alveolar, which means that the component of the ch has a place of articulation rather further back in the mouth than the t sound usually has. And when we talk about the ch, that is a final in syllable, and it has the effect of shortening a preceding vowel, as do the fortis consonants. So the ch and j often have the rounded lips. For example, if you have any questions or any hurdles or barricades while you listen to these voice recordings, right, and if you do not understand all these things, you can ask me questions. You're most welcome to ask me questions, right? Do not feel hesitant, and whatever question comes across your mind, you can ask me. Feel free, right? Take care. Thank you so much.